Well, it's about time for an orchard walk. End of August 2018. Looking off the back deck here, my Vijana tree. First crop for it. Well, you know, we've had a few apples on it the last few years, but it gets kind of shaded in the backyard here. But it's got its first crop this year. And so I'm looking forward to that. I ran into it with a golf cart one night this spring and put a big gouge in the trunk. So this is what I did to it with the golf cart this spring. Coming into the house in the dark, my headlights weren't working, so didn't see the tree and smacked it pretty good. And but it seems to be healing up okay. Maybe that's what it needed, a good spanking to get the apples this year. So I do have a little problem with fungus in my orchards because we typically in August and September we start getting foggy nights, and I don't really need to I don't really want to spray a bunch of fungicide. Most of the apples are going to be used in cider anyway. This is called sooty blotch. Okay, it'll wash off. But let me grab the golf cart and take a walk. I've not sprayed as much this year. I put, I think I sprayed 4 times. Once before blossom, once after. Once after blossom drop and twice after that. So let's go into the new orchard. The new orchard is now encompassing. We got a little bit of sprinkling. Hope it doesn't get into a downpour. So I got to keep the camera out of the rain. Yeah, it's starting to light rain now. Well, this is the second. Looks like I'm stuck on the cart or I'm going to get wet. This is the second mow job of the summer, and then the belt on the mower broke. So we'll have to get that fixed and get this done. These trees are in their second leaf from planting. These actually, the first couple rows here, the first leaf, this first year. Look at the chafer damage on that. So since and chafers will do big damage on, these are the cherry tree. They'll skeletonize the leaf. The leaf won't die, it'll just become less efficient. Apple tree limbs, yeah, see, look at there he is right there. Looks like he was dead though. Apple tree limbs will typically die if they get damaged a lot, but cherry trees, they tend to, look at, they shrug it off. There's still some green on that one right there. But of course, if they strip the whole tree, the tree's in trouble. These are mostly apple trees though, so second leaf. Do some pruning this year, and a little bit of scab on there. But they're growing pretty good, look pretty healthy. We had kind of a drought in June, and that was a little bit hard on them because these were just planted this year. But since July and August has been pretty good rain. And again, it's raining today. We had a good rain last night. I'm going to go over to let me see how my son went diagonally through the patch. These trees are planted at 12 by 12 on center. So you can mow diagonally or straight through the trees, either way. They're putting on a lot of leaves now. Let's go over to what used to be called the North Orchard. And I have to go through the ditch. The rattling you might hear is the hose reel on the back of the golf cart. This tree right in front of me is mostly Vijana Gold. There's some Cortland on the lowest limbs, and it is, boy, that one is tipping way down. The leaves are showing the back sides of them. But you see, I get this sooty blotch on a lot of apples. Wouldn't be bad to shake a couple apples off. That'll shake off the less solid ones. It's way overproducing right now. Let the tree pick the ones it likes the best. This limb here, they're a little more red. These are Cortlands, but these are Vijana Golds. And if I had thinned them, I'd get bigger apple. But they're going to all be pressed into cider this year. This tree is a Franken tree. I don't remember all that's on here. It is what I call the Northwoods Early, but it has some others. Some other apples on it. It looks like it's been dropping the what are those called? Lodi, early apple. This is a Liberty tree. And I didn't thin this one. This one isn't too bad though. Probably more insect damage, more sooty blotch than normal this year. I am getting pears. I'm getting pears on my orchis tree. Although they're small right here, up near the top. Let's see if I can zoom in. Those are quite a bit bigger. Kind of hard to spray way up there, but this is the first major crop I've had on this tree in its life, which was planted, I think, in 2002, so 16 years old. I've got a few, a handful of pears in other years. This one didn't get sprayed a whole lot. But, oh, gee, take a look at this. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. I did a little bit of experiment years ago. I will update this experiment. Here in my pear tree is an apple, a Jonathan apple. That is, I think, the last graft. It was grafted right here. The graft doesn't look all that healthy, and the limb doesn't look all that healthy. The tip is dead. Looks like it's dying back. I grafted, I don't know, 4 or 5 Jonathans onto this pear tree by accident, and I thought it was a pear sign I was putting on. I left them. Most of them have died since. That's been a few years ago. I'll update that video. Here is my Dayton tree, way overproducing right here. Okay, I've come out here and I've grabbed and thinned quite a bit yet, and it's still way too many. Way too many. But I'm not going for size this year. Actually, the apples look pretty good though. I hope I don't break any limbs. I got about 3 weeks to go before these are ready to pick. And I call this my show tree. It's a nice pretty apple right next to the road. And I'll definitely get 3 bushels off it this year. The Mccowan tree has a few limbs that are loaded, and most of the tree didn't have hardly any blossoms on it. But here we have, you see, like one limb that had blossoms and put out fruit, and overproduced on that limb. But here's the Dayton tree on the sunny side. Notice the apples are more red, and that tree is just loaded. Now they probably won't get full size because there's so many apples on there, but oh man, they still taste good. And they're going to be put into cider. I'll take the best ones and I'll put them in refrigerated storage, and they'll be good for 2 or 3 weeks without getting too soft. They're not a long storage apple, but for 3 weeks, or almost a month, they'll be good eating, and the rest will go into cider. Here we are on the north side of the house, below the house, and this is what was called the lower orchard. We have a Vijana gold tree. This was grafted over many years ago from a Red Delicious. Here's the graft right there, and the graft here and over there. So these are Vijana gold here. They'll get a little bit red, a little more red in the sun. But that tree is its first big crop this year. Vijana, or the golden russet, is it had some apples on one side, on the north side here. They're kind of small. The rest of the tree went dormant this year, so not much for that. It's a rough apple, the golden russet. It's sweet with good tartness in it. Makes a good cider apple. Here's my. Oh, there's just I'll use a damaged apple there. This is a Scarlet Surprise, and it's got probably a week or two to go. It's not as red as last year. It tastes okay. It's tasted better the last couple of years than this early season. Here's my blueberries. I need to call my friend over and tell him, hey, come on, get some blueberries. He gave me these 3 bushes. They weren't growing at his place in the shade, so he brought them over to me. He said, yeah, I'll put them in the ground. Those are good. Really good. I think the birds are getting these about as fast as they're getting ripe now. Here's my wealthy tree. This was grafted over also from a red and delicious. 3 grafts right here in the crotch. And this is its first big crop. Usually it would have some apples up in the upper limbs, and the birds would get them all, and the bees, before they ever got to ripe. This year, didn't have a good crop. The spy gold is almost non-existent this year. It's biennial. This Honeycrisp, really showing the iron chlorosis, the yellowing of the leaves, probably from the drought conditions in June. But you'll get this with Honeycrisp a lot. The apples are small. This is its off year. It was really loaded last year. That's a Honeycrisp too. Same iron chlorosis. A few bugs. The Shizuka tree. I don't know. The Shizuka bush. And little Honeycrisp tree. Unknown when I planted it what it was. Now I know it's a Honeycrisp. But I didn't thin any apples this year. Or I probably would have been getting better apples, but damage from plum curculio. I'm happy with the Wealthy tree this year. Wealthy is not a new apple. It's pretty old. I think back in the 1800s it comes from. But it's a healthy tree. Really easy to grow. Consistent cropper. Yeah, that's what plum curculio does to an apple. If the apple survives, it's typically all lumpy. This cabin orchard will probably be mostly just for the deer once the new orchard starts producing and I get all the apples I want. Yeah, look at this Honeycrisp tree here. Also has the iron chlorosis. I mean, you can spot this halfway across the orchard. And there's one over there too. Biennial is this Gala tree. The Nova Easy Grow is doing pretty good. It's becoming a pretty reliable cropper. It's probably not. That deer's going to get that one soon. the deer, let's see now, this is about 5.5 feet right there. Okay, so the deer are keeping it pruned here. This is my Richelieu tree. Now I like this apple. It's not a good choice for a deer orchard because it gets ripe early, before season, and if the birds get into it like that, this apple rots away fast. It can't take having the skin broke. It is a good tasting apple. One of my earliest apples. But the deer love it and the critters love it. I see where they pulled the fencing off from around the tree, climbing up it. And there's only a few apples left and they're not even ripe yet. And they pulled the fence. I'm going to have to actually tie or wire those fences up. I don't want any bucks rubbing on the tree. That's what the fence is to protect against. And from voles chewing on the bark in the wintertime. The Turley wine sap was really loaded last year. Not so much this year. Bent down some branches that used to be up hangers. Now they're down hangers. So the deer are really pounding this orchard as always. I think next year I'm going to fence it in, put a temporary fence around it, and really, if I want apples to be left over for deer season, I'm going to have to fence it in and trap the animals that are giving me a problem. The grass is pretty much all grass now. There's not a whole lot of other forbs in here growing. I could probably spray it and reseed it with something, but that issue has been fixed. Oh, here's the Wolf River tree. Haven't had apples on this in a few years. They tend to be pretty large apples. They don't taste any good. In pie they're supposed to be good, but not as a fresh eating apple. The red court, or redder sport of a Cortland, does not have thick crops like a Cortland. And the Mccowan, which was a heavy producer last year, is a lighter producer. Usually the Cortland is not biennial, but out here it gets a little bit of shade, so it kind of goes biennial.